I can't. Negative. I can't say. All I can say is this man needed help. This man seemed like a man who was coming up to a storm or to a climax. And this very blood-curdling thing at one of the cutoffs where he said, children kill, and then sort of an agonized cutoff, enough to turn your hair whiter than mine.
So inside the thrift shop, St. Vincent de Paul, attorney Melvin Belli and the San Francisco police waited for the Zodiac killer. The man did not show, so now all we can do is wait perhaps for that next phone call from the man who calls himself Zodiac, who has killed 5 and says he's going to kill again.
September 27th, 1969. It's a Saturday afternoon at Lake Berryessa in Napa County, California. It's beautiful out, upper 70s, clear skies, the kind of fall day that makes you forget the world is on fire. 2 college students, Brian Hart, 20 years old, and Cecilia Shepard, 22, are picnicking on a small island connected to the shore by a strip of sand. They're old friends catching up, they're eating, they're talking about school, and then Cecilia sees something.
And this something is just standing there by the tree line, maybe 60, 70 feet away. A man, but not a man really, not anymore, because this man is wearing something, a hood. A homemade black executioner-style hood that hangs down to his chest. He has a bib on. There's clip-on sunglasses over his eye holes. And on the front of the bib, drawn in white, is a symbol, a circle with a crosshair through it. This guy looks like he walked out of a movie script nightmare. This guy went full on Spinal Tap and took this thing up to an 11.
He approaches them, and he's holding a handgun in a holster, and he tells them, calmly, that he's an escaped convict from a prison in Colorado. He says he needs their money and their car keys so he can get to Mexico. He asks Cecilia to tie Brian up with pre-cut clothesline he's brought with him. She does. Then he ties her up himself.
And then he stops pretending.
He pulls out a knife, roughly 12 inches long, and begins stabbing them. Brian 6 times in the back, Cecilia 10 times. She tries to roll away and he just keeps going. And when he's done, he walks to Brian's Carmen Gia in the parking area, and in black felt tip marker, he writes on the car door the cross circle symbol, the date of 2 previous attacks, and then September 27-69-630- by knife. He is signing his work like an artist.
He calls him 45 minutes later from a payphone at a car wash in downtown Napa. He speaks in a flat, calm monotone. I want to report a murder. No, a double murder. That's my monotone, by the way. They are 2 miles north of park headquarters. They were in a white Volkswagen Carmen Gia. And then he hangs up and he disappears. He was described as a white male in Napa, so maybe disappear isn't the right word.
Wow.
Maybe walk away is better.
Wow. Okay, we've started the wows early, dude. But unbeknownst to the killer, or possibly not, Brian Hartnell actually survived. Unfortunately, Cecilia Shepard fell into a coma and she did die 2 days later. And the man in the hood, well, he was never identified. He was never caught. He was never even seen without his costume. And this was only attack number 3.
Sneaky footsteps in the night, clues that vanish out of sight. Grab your hat and magnifying glass. We'll talk this case and have a blast. Mugshot mysteries, we're on the trail. Twists and turns that never fail. Laughs and chills, it's quite the show. Who did it? Tune in to know.
Welcome to Mugshot Mysteries. I'm Kathryn.
And I'm Gabriel.
And this is part 1 of our 4-part series on one of the most infamous unsolved cases in American history, the Zodiac Killer.
Yep, we're doing it. We're doing the Zodiac. And I'll be very honest, I didn't know a whole lot about the Zodiac. I mean, don't think different of me. And I don't know if that's a big omission or not. I know I disappointed Kathryn.
Yep.
You know, like I had just brought home fast food and I didn't bring her fries.
Honestly.
But what I'm going to do, so as far as this story goes, is like give a book report. We really hope that we bring something new to the subject, because if there's one thing we dread in life, it's to be boring.
Absolutely.
So let's hurry up and do this before I forget everything I crammed for. So we have a man who killed at least 5 people. He claimed he killed 37, and he taunted police with coded messages for years. And to this day, over a half century later, nobody knows who he was.
We're going to cover everything: the attacks, the letters, the ciphers, the suspects, the investigation failures, and even what the David Fincher movie got right and got wrong. It is a 4-parter Mugshot, family, so buckle in, get comfortable, cancel your plans.
Or maybe just don't cancel your plans. Maybe just listen to this while you travel to your plans.
Yes, because this is just going to give you the best type of cocktail party stories: murder, intrigue, and mystery. I mean, come on, who doesn't love that? Today in part 1, we're building the world this killer operated in because we love that part. You cannot understand the Zodiac without understanding 1968 and 1969 America, and specifically the San Francisco Bay Area. And then we're walking through every confirmed attack, start to finish.
And at the end of this episode, the Zodiac is going to do something that changes everything. He's going to pick up a pen. And you know what they say about a pen? Anyone who thinks it's mightier than a sword has not been stabbed with both.
Okay, so before we get into the chronological breakdown of the attacks, we need to set the stage for you. Because the late 1960s in the Bay Area weren't just a time, they were the time. And understanding the cultural chaos and drama that surrounded these murders is part of understanding how a serial killer could operate in broad daylight and also never get caught. You know, that and sheer dumb luck.
So 1968. Let's talk about 1968, because we really need to talk about 1968. It's a year America broke in a lot of tangible ways. Like if you had to pick a top 10 of years where the national psyche just cracks open like an egg, this is high on that list. This is the Mount Rushmore of screwy years.
Yep. So let's go over some. January 1968, the Tet Offensive in Vietnam. Communist forces launch a massive coordinated attack. It doesn't succeed militarily, but it absolutely destroys the narrative that the U.S. is winning the war. Walter Cronkite goes on television, the most trusted mustache man in America, and says the country is mired in stalemate. President Johnson allegedly turns to an aide and says, "It's all over."
By all accounts, he kept his other Johnson wrapped up while he said that. Yeah, probably. He liked to whip it out.
Oh my gosh.
It's a pretty well-known thing. That's the joke. He liked to do that. Anyways.
Is that the joke or is that just facts?
It's kind of a fact. But he was right. It so was over. Vietnam was, and look, we can do a whole thing about Vietnam, but the short version is this. By 1969, troop levels have peaked at over 500,000 Americans deployed. Roughly 50,000 of our American soldiers are dead. 300 are tragically dying every week, and nobody can explain what the point is anymore. Like, at least World War II had a clear villain. Vietnam is asinine. It's so readily apparent that if there was ever a point to this whole thing, it's passed years ago. Vietnam has a body count that's embarrassing to talk about, and a question mark where the point was supposed to go. They needed to get out of this relationship and pass.
Gabriel.
I'm just saying, if every friend you know doesn't like her, you gotta ghost.
Okay, well, fair enough, and moving on. April 4th, 1968. Martin Luther King Jr. is assassinated in Memphis. 2 months later, June 5th, Robert F. Kennedy is assassinated in Los Angeles. 2 pillars of hope are gone in 60 days.
And I don't think people today fully grasp what Dr. King meant to that moment in time. This wasn't just a civil rights leader. This was the moral voice of an entire movement. He won the Nobel Peace Prize. He led the March on Washington. He obviously had a dream, and by 8, a whole lot of America was starting to share this dream. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. These are real, tangible things that you can touch. They're victories that happen in large part because of this man's ability to move a nation just with his words. And then he steps out onto a motel balcony in Memphis, and a single rifle shot ends it all.
He was in Memphis supporting striking sanitation workers. He was 39 years old, and when word got out, riots erupted in over 100 cities across the country. Washington, D.C., Chicago, Baltimore, Kansas City, Louisville. Entire neighborhoods burned. The National Guard was deployed in multiple cities. 43 people died in the unrest that followed. The non-violent movement that King had built and championed was being tested in real time because the man who preached peace had been killed by violence, and a lot of people were done with being patient.
2 months later, and this is not going to help at all, June 5th, 1968, Robert F. Kennedy had just won the California Democratic primary. He's the frontrunner for the Democratic presidential nomination. He's standing in the kitchen pantry of the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. He had just delivered his victory speech, and he's shot 3 times. He dies the next day at Good Samaritan Hospital. He's just 42. RFK was shot the night he won the California primary. California, the same state where our story takes place, the state that was supposed to represent the future. Instead, it's becoming a national bloody scene.
And what made Bobby Kennedy's death so devastating, beyond the obvious human tragedy aspects of it, was what he represented politically. He was the one candidate who seemed to bridge the gap. He had support from the Black communities and white working class voters. He was anti-war, but also a former attorney general. He was a Kennedy, which in 1968 America still meant something almost mythological after his brother's assassination in Dallas just 5 years earlier. People saw him as the one person who could maybe possibly hold the country together.
And now he's gone. This guy who was supposed to fix it gets shot in a damn hotel kitchen. And now the Democratic Party has no unifying candidate. And this is going to lead directly to the disaster in Chicago. And you got to hear this story.
August 1968, the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Anti-war protesters clash with police on live television, and it's absolute chaos. Delegates are fighting inside the convention hall about the future of the party, and outside, cops are beating people with nightsticks and spraying tear gas. 600 protesters are injured. Over 100 officers are hurt. 1 person is dead, and it's a disaster, an unmitigated disaster.
So the Democratic Party is looking great at the moment, right? They nominate Hubert Humphrey, and he didn't win a single primary. The anti-war voters feel betrayed. The whole country watches this on television and thinks, this is what democracy looks like now? Right hooks and batons? The left is fractured. The center is terrified. And into the void steps our man. Enter Nixon. And out of all this chaos, who emerges as the next president of the United States? Richard Milhouse Nixon. And this dude is running on the law and order platform because nothing says law and order like a man whose own staff refers to as Tricky Dick. And we ain't talking about the bedroom.
Wow. Well, he was already called up before Watergate, to be fair, or to be accurate, I should say.
Yeah, the man is speedrunning the villainy tree like a freaking lumberjack.
So Nixon is a fascinating figure for this era because he understood something that the Democrats didn't in 1968. Americans were scared, not just of Vietnam and not just of assassinations. They were scared of the chaos itself. The riots, the protests, the drugs, the long hair, the feeling that the country was coming apart at the seams. Nixon looked at all of that and said, I represent the silent majority, the people who go to work and pay their taxes and don't burn things down. And it worked.
It worked because he was selling order to a country that was in freefall. Never mind that the order he was selling came with, a side of paranoia, illegal wiretapping, and, what would eventually be the biggest political scandal at the time in American history. But it's a story for another day. The point is, Nixon wins in November of 68. This is 1 month, exactly 1 month before the Zodiac's first kill.
So the man who ran on Law and Order takes office, and almost immediately, Northern California produces a serial killer that the law cannot catch and cannot bring to order. There's an irony there.
So, folks, let's recap the scoreboard for 1968.
Ready.
We have 2 assassinations.
Check.
We have a war nobody can justify.
Check, check.
We have a political convention that turned into a street brawl.
Triple check.
And we have a president whose quote-unquote middle name should have been a warning.
Yup.
That's a backdrop. That's where we are when the Zodiac starts these killings.
Let's zoom in that microscope because the Bay Area in the late 1960s is its own universe. San Francisco is ground zero for American counterculture. The summer of love was 1967, right? 100,000 young people descended on the Haight-Ashbury district of this utopian experiment in peace and communal living and very, very generous drug use. And I mean, very, very generous.
Very generous. Like, say, the Diggers. And this is an anarchist group in San Francisco. They're passing out free food in Golden Gate Park. Their free store stocked with stolen goods. You could get free clothes. It was like if a commune and a Salvation Army had a baby, and then that baby ate a sheet of acid, and they were all at a Joplin concert.
Oh my gosh. But by late 68, though, the utopia had curdled. The Haight-Ashbury district has gone from flower children to just like hard drugs, runaways, and predators moving in. It's not peace and love anymore. And what I would say is there were actually two distinct countercultures operating in the Bay Area at the same time. And not everyone wanted the same thing.
Right. There's a Stanford cultural historian named Fred Turner, and he breaks this down really well. Fred says, you had the New Left centered in Berkeley. They are political. They wanted to change the system from within, man. Protests, organizing. They were all about direct action. And then you had the San Francisco crowd, and they wanted to zoom off into space, like real out there, man. Like, let's explore other worlds with consciousness expansion, psychedelia, transcendence. So there's two completely different philosophies, say McDonald's down the block.
Wow. Okay, but across the bay in Oakland, you've got the Black Panthers. So you have radical politics, a drug culture, and a Black Revolutionary Party that's being organized, all happening within a 30-minute drive of each other. The Bay Area is kind of a pressure cooker at this point in time.
And the rice is burning, baby.
Yeah.
Now, of course, everyone's dressed for the occasion. And I want to paint a picture here. The fashion of this era in San Francisco is a lot. We've seen the pictures of our parents and had a good jealous laugh at those bell bottoms, those fringe vests, those tie-dyed everything. Men with their hair down to their shoulders, women in those go-go boots, the real high ones.
I love them.
Yeah, 15-year-olds that look like they're 40, which brings us to 1969. Because, like we had to talk about 68, we got to talk about 69 too.
All right. So 1969 is where everything converges. And I mean everything. This single year contains both the absolute peak of 1960s idealism and its complete destruction.
July 20th, 1969. Neil Armstrong walks on the moon. Humanity's greatest achievement. Maybe.
Oh, don't go there.
No, we're going to go there. The whole world watches in awe, like they should. We literally touch the sky. Now, if you believe in that sort of thing, which you know, as a rational individual, I do. Now, I'll refrain from mentioning people that may be close to me who think this is a hoax.
Yeah, be careful because then the Circleville letters are going to start. And I already said I won't turn my brother-in-law in.
So all I'm saying is you got to watch out for that angry right cross from Buzz Aldrin, right? You know, and if you never heard that story, Aldrin punched a dude because he was told that it was a hoax right to his old man strengthened body.
I think I could understand that, you know? See, there's one thing you can look forward to now that you're older, and that's old man strength.
I'm waiting for it, baby.
I would say I'm on board with the moon landing being real. Wouldn't the Soviet Union, I mean, Russia now, be screaming at the moon about how the U.S. faked it?
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, they seem to agree that we did, in fact, beat them, Cold War or not.
They sure do.
And they wouldn't do that. Let's talk about the next cultural shift moment. And that happens 3 weeks later, August 8th and August 9th. And that's the Manson family murders. The members of Charles Manson's cult killed 7 people over 2 nights in Los Angeles, including actress Sharon Tate, who was very tragically 8.5 months pregnant.
And can we just talk about Manson's cultural staying power for a second? Because Kathryn's face right now, she's doing the thing.
I'm not doing a thing.
You're doing the thing where your eyes get slightly wider because you want to talk about the Mansons for another 45 minutes, but you know that we're kind of on a schedule.
We are on a schedule. He's fine. He's fascinating and terrifying, and we will get to him someday because there's so much to unpack there. But Not today, Mugshot family. Today, he's just a supporting character in this story.
Yeah, the man has t-shirts. That's where we are as a society. A cult leader who has orchestrated multiple murders, has merch like he's an alt-rock band.
Okay, I don't have the t-shirts. I'm just fascinated by the brain.
Moving on.
Okay, so 1 week after the Manson murders, August 15th through 18th, a little concert known as Woodstock happens. 400,000 people gather in upstate New York for 3 days of peace and music. It's the high watermark of the counterculture, the absolute zenith of maybe we can change the world with love.
Yeah, man.
I mean, we've seen the videos of Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and a bunch of muddy flowers smelling hippies.
So, within the span of 10 days, in August 1969, America experiences its most horrific cult murders and its most beautiful communal gathering. And the Zodiac Killer is operating right in the middle of both of these things. His most active period is the summer and fall of 1969. He's killing people while the country is both reaching for the stars and tearing itself apart like a tortilla.
Like a tortilla. Okay. Well, guys, it gets worse. December 6, 1969, the Altamont Free concert. The Rolling Stones perform at a speedway in Northern California, and the Hells Angels, who were hired for security.
In exchange for $500 worth of beer, by the way. Like you do.
Yeah. Well, they end up stabbing a man to death in the crowd.
Probably because of the $500 worth of beer.
Quite possibly. So 4 total deaths that day, and that's widely considered the moment the 60s dream just officially died.
So here's the philosophical setup for this entire series. And I'm going to come back to this across all 4 parts. The Zodiac didn't operate in a vacuum. He operated in an America where violence was everywhere, where assassinations and wars and riots and cult murders were all front page news every single day. And in this environment, the Zodiac understood something deeply modern, something that most serial killers before him didn't seem to get. The spectacle is the point. The violence isn't enough. You have to perform it. You have to brand it. You have to make the audience watch. In a decade where every political movement and every cultural moment was fighting for attention, the Zodiac built himself into headline. He never stopped. He was his own serial killer TMZ.
Wow. Well, now we have to talk about our victims. The first confirmed Zodiac attack happened December 20th, 1968 on Lake Herman Road in Benicia, California. This is a rural, secluded road east of Vallejo, and it's a known lover's lane. Teenagers would go there to park. It's dark, it's quiet, and it's private. And the victims here are David Arthur Faraday, 17 years old, and Betty Lou Jensen, 16. They're on their very first date.
Their first date, 16 and 17 years old, their whole lives ahead of them. They told Betty Lou's parents they'd be home by 11. It's tragic.
David is driving his mother's Rambler station wagon, and they arrive at a gravel turnout on Lake Herman Road around 10:15 p.m. They park and, they're doing what teenagers do, talking, listening to the radio, being young. And at approximately 11 p.m., a woman named Stella Borges is driving by and spots them. Or rather, she spots their bodies. When police arrive, they find Betty Lou on the ground about 30 feet from the car. She had been shot 5 times in the back. She ran. She tried to get away. David is near the car with a single gunshot wound to the head. Now, he was still alive when found, but he did die en route to the hospital. The weapon was a .22 caliber semi-automatic pistol, believed to be a J.C. Higgins Model 80, Winchester Western Super X copper-coated bullets.
There's no witnesses, there's no motive, there's no connection between the killer and the victims. These are random targets. A stranger drove up to 2 teenagers parked on this dark road and executed them. In 1968, this is classified as a random killing. The police have almost nothing to go on. There's no fingerprints, there's no shell casings that lead anywhere definitive. It's filed away. And for 7 months, that's just where it stays.
7 months of silence. And then the 4th of July, Independence Day, 1969. Now this time, we're at Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo, California, just 4 miles from Lake Herman Road. And it's another lover's lane. And another young couple. Darlene Elizabeth Theron, 22, and Michael Renaud Mugshot, 19.
Now, Darlene's situation is complicated. She's married, but she and Michael have been spending a lot of time together. They've been at a local restaurant earlier that evening. They've hung out with friends. They spent most of the 4th together. Now, around 11:45 p.m., Darlene picks Michael up and they drive to this parking lot.
They pull in and park about 70 feet from the entrance. Almost immediately, another car pulls in and parks about 80 feet to their left. The driver turns off his headlights and just sits there. Michael asks Darlene about it, and she tells him not to worry about it. And then, abruptly, the other car tears out of the lot.
And here's where it gets even creepier, because 5 minutes later, that same car just comes on back.
Now this time, the driver pulls up right next to Michael's side of the car, just a few feet away. He gets out, and he's carrying a flashlight, which he shines directly into their faces. Now Michael thinks it's a police officer, so they roll down the window. And then, without a word, the man opens fire. He's using a 9mm handgun this time, which is a different weapon than the first attack. Michael is hit in the jaw, the shoulder, and the leg. Darlene is hit multiple times. The shooter walks back to his car, and Michael thinks it's over. Then the man hears Michael moaning, turns around, comes back, and fires more rounds into both of them. And then he leaves.
Darlene died at Kaiser Foundation Hospital shortly after. Michael incredibly survives, though he's severely wounded, and his account would be complicated by his injuries and honestly, some inconsistencies over the years that we will get into in a later episode.
But here's the moment that changes everything. At 12:40 a.m., a man calls the Vallejo Police Department from a payphone. And in a low, calm, monotone voice, he says, and I'm paraphrasing here, "I want to report a double murder. If you go 1 mile west on Columbus Parkway to the public park, you'll find the kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye." That's my monotone.
It sounded great.
Thank you.
He connected the crimes himself. Nobody in law enforcement had linked the Lake Herman Road shootings to this one. There was no task force, there's no pattern recognition, there's nothing. 7 months had passed. This was a different weapon, this was a different location, and this guy calls the police, unprompted, and he says, "That was me too." Both of them. He's building a body of work, and he wants the credit for it.
And he's about to want a lot more than credit. So attack number 3 is the Lake Berryessa attack. That's, September 27th, 1969. And we open the show with this one. So you've already heard the broad strokes. But let's go a little bit deeper because the details here are what separate this case from every other serial killer case in history.
Okay, so I need to talk about the costume a little bit more.
All right.
Because we breezed past it in the opening and it deserves its own moment, and I'm going to tell you why. This man sewed a freaking hood. He designed it. He put on clip-on sunglasses on the eye holes. He drew the cross circle symbol on the front. He brought pre-cut lengths of clothesline. He brought a 12-inch knife. This isn't a guy who snapped. This is a guy who sat at home, probably at a table, with fabric and scissors and a marker like he's doing a project, and he thought, you know what this murder needs? A logo.
Babe.
I'm serious. In 1969, this man seemingly understood branding. He understood visual identity. He creates an iconic image that is literally burned into the true crime canon 57 years later. There's marketing executives with corner offices and MBAs who can't do what the Zodiac did with a black hood and a Sharpie. It's dark, and it's not like I get any pleasure in saying this, but you have to notice and you have to try to understand where he's coming from so we can find some closure, but also so we can be better prepared for what drives our most sick people.
The specifics of the attack matter too. So he approaches Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, who, for the record, were friends, not a romantic couple, despite what the David Fincher movie implies. He tells them he's an escaped convict who needs money and a car to get to Mexico. And now he's lying, obviously, but it's a smart lie. It gives the victims a reason to just cooperate.
So he's conning them there. Give me what I want and I'll leave. And that's obviously designed to prevent them from fighting back. He controls this situation with something that's plausible enough before he finally does the unthinkable.
So he has Cecilia tie Brian up first, and then he ties her up himself. Okay, so they're on their stomachs, they're bound, and then horrifyingly, he starts stabbing. Again, Brian gets 6 wounds to the back and Cecilia gets 10. Brian later recalled hearing Cecilia trying to roll away as the knife kept coming. Now, he survived and she didn't. And after the attack, he walks to Brian's car and writes on the car door, the cross-circled symbol, and below that, the dates of the Lake Herman Road shooting, the Blue Rock Springs shooting, and this attack. He is keeping score. He's literally cataloging his work. And then he drives 27 miles south to a payphone at a car wash in downtown Napa and calls the police to report what he's done.
45-minute drive. He's attacked 2 people. He's nearly killed them both. He gets into his car. He drives 45 minutes to a payphone, and then he just calmly reports the crime. This is not a person in the grip of some kind of frenzy. This is a person who has a process. He has an exit strategy. He planned this call in a way that he planned that stupid hood. It's all part of this production.
So now we're moving to attack 4, which is in Presidio Heights, and it's 2 weeks later, October 11th, 1969. And now this attack is completely different from the others. It's different in location, different in target, different in method. And it's the one where the police come the closest, and I mean freaking agonizingly close to catching him. Like, I'm over here kind of slamming my fist on the table because I'm so frustrated by it.
Well, let's tell him how.
The victim is Paul Lee Stein, 29 years old. He's a cab driver, a doctoral student, a married man. He's not a teenager parked on Lover's Lane. He's working. The Zodiac hails his cab at Mason and Gary Streets in Union Square, San Francisco, and gives him a destination in Presidio Heights, which is an upscale residential neighborhood. This is not a secluded area. There are houses, there are streetlights, there are people.
And this is obviously a huge, massive shift.
Yes.
The first 3 attacks were in remote, rural, and semi-rural locations. Lovers' lanes, a lake, places where nobody could see what happened. Presidio Heights is a wealthy San Francisco neighborhood. The Zodiac is obviously getting bolder, or he's getting reckless, or he's getting bored and needs a new challenge. Maybe all 3. Maybe you should just got a better fucking hobby, bastard.
At the corner of Washington and Cherry Streets around 9:55 p.m., the Zodiac shoots Paul Stein in the right side of the head. He then takes Stein's wallet and car keys, and, this is critical, he cuts a large piece from the back of Stein's shirt and soaks it in blood. He's collecting a trophy. And he's gathering proof.
And he has company because 3 teenage siblings are watching this happen from a house directly across the street. They can see the killer's face clearly by the streetlight. They watch him lean into the cab. They watch him wipe down the surfaces, presumably cleaning his fingerprints. And they see him rifle through Stein's clothing. They call the San Francisco Police Department. This is all leading to something perfect, right? Well, this is where we get that epic fuck up. Because in the entire investigation, this is that moment.
The teenagers describe the suspect to the dispatcher. They describe a husky white male in a dark or black jacket. The dispatcher relays the description to patrol cars. Except the dispatcher gets one detail wrong. One freaking catastrophic case-altering detail. The dispatcher broadcasts that the suspect is a black male. Because we could go there, but I think you get the point.
The witnesses say white. The dispatcher says black. Look, it could be a handwriting error. The dispatcher was likely scrawling these notes real quickly, and they do WMA for white male adult, and that could look a lot like NMA for Negro male adult. You think that they probably need to change the way they're doing these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's that or not, or both things. Who's really to know? But know that this could have been over then and there. One letter, that's it.
Yep.
One call.
You can tell I'm frustrated. So 2 SFPD patrol officers, Donald Folk and Eric Zelms, are just 2 blocks away when the dispatch comes in. Now they respond immediately. About 3 minutes after the shooting at roughly 10 p.m., they encounter a white male walking east on Jackson Street, just 2 blocks from the crime scene. Now the man is walking casually. When he notices the patrol car, he turns slightly as if stepping into a stairway leading up to a house.
Folk later said the man matched the composite sketch perfectly. He was the right age, the right build, the right look, but dispatch said black male. The man in front of them was obviously not black, so Folk slows down, he glances at him, and then he drives past. Some accounts say they asked the man if he had seen anything suspicious, and they say the man said yes, someone had been running east with a gun. Either way, they let him go.
Now, by the time the correction goes out, white male, not black male, the Zodiac is gone. The SFPD conducts a massive search of the area, including the nearby Presidio military base, and they find nothing. He's vanished. Officers Folk and Zelms may have been face-to-face with the Zodiac killer and let him walk because of a dispatcher mistake.
And guess what? The Zodiac knew it. He taunted them about it later in a letter. He wrote, "2 cops pulled a goof."
He has an accent like that now. You always go Southern.
That was not Southern at all. That was my monotone. So he obviously uses lighter language than I would have used, goof. Either way, LOL wasn't an acronym back then, was it? But whatever the equivalent is, that's basically what the Zodiac was. LOLing at everybody at the slapstick police chase. He was watching them search for him. He was right there, but he was white.
Now, one more thing about this attack that I need to mention. Officer Eric Zelms, Folk's partner that night, the other man in the patrol car, well, he was killed in the line of duty on New Year's Day, 1970, less than 3 months later. So he never got the chance to fully process what happened or what he might have seen.
The Zodiac case is full of these moments where you think if just one thing had been different, if the dispatcher had written the right letter, if Folk had trusted his cop instincts over the radio, if Zelms had lived long enough to tell his full story. But that's how this case works. Every single near miss makes the mystery deeper and the tree grow. And us talking about this 57 years later.
All right. So now this is where we're going to get into some contact. So now the Zodiac has killed 5 people. David Faraday, Betty Lou Jensen, Darlene Farron, Cecilia Shepard, and Paul Stein. And attacked 2 others who survived, Michael Mugshot and Brian Hartnell. He's operated across 4 different jurisdictions, Solana County, Vallejo, Napa County, and San Francisco. So 4 different police departments, 4 different sets of detectives. And in the late 1960s, these agencies don't share information efficiently. There's no centralized database, no task force, and each department is running its own investigation in its own silo.
And this drives me absolutely crazy. Now, in 2026, if a serial killer operates across 4 jurisdictions, there's literally a task force assembled in a week. In 1969, the Vallejo police and the San Francisco police, they may as well have been different planets. They're not sharing evidence. They're not comparing notes. They're barely talking to each other. This is like trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle when there's 4 different people and they all have a few pieces and nobody's willing to put them on the same table.
And this is exactly the environment the Zodiac exploits. Because while the police can't communicate with each other, the Zodiac communicates just fine. On July 31st, 1969, less than a month after the Blue Rock Springs attack, 3 Bay Area newspapers each receive a letter: the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, and the Vallejo Times-Herald. Each letter contains 1/3 of a 408-character coded message.
A coded message, not a confession, not a rant, a cipher, a puzzle. This isn't a man who just wants to be known. This is a man who wants to be studied. He wants to be more than he is or ever could be, really. He really sounds like he may have had daddy issues. That's all I'm saying.
Or mommy issues, or both. The letters include details about the Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs attack that only the killer would know. And they come with a demand: publish the ciphers on your front pages or I'll go on a killing spree. The newspapers and police debate what to do. And guess what? By no surprise, they publish.
Because what are you going to do? He's already killed 4 people. He's promising more. You publish. You play his game. And that is the first time you realize something about this case. The Zodiac isn't just a killer. He's a producer. He's directing the media coverage of his own crimes. He decides what gets printed. He sets the deadlines. He's controlling the narrative. In 1969, with no internet, with no social media, with no 24-hour news cycle, a man with a pen and a stamp has figured out how to make the entire San Francisco Bay Area his audience. And he didn't even have to make an OnlyFans account.
Oh my gosh. Now, 4 days later, on August 4th, 1969, the San Francisco Examiner receives another letter. And this one contains the line that defines the rest of the story. 6 words. This is the Zodiac speaking.
So he freaking named himself.
Mhm.
Now think about this. Most serial killers get their names from the media. The press names them. The public spreads it. The Night Stalker, the Green River Killer, BTK. These are all media-given names. The Zodiac decided to cut to the chase and get to it before they did. He designed his own symbol. He wrote his own press releases. He is, as far as I can tell, the first serial killer in American history who understood personal branding. He's a serial killer influencer.
Oh my God.
Look, I am not trying to glamorize this guy, but you can't help but see the angle he was taking. And we lapped it up.
And that name, the Zodiac, is part of why this case has lasted. It's evocative. It sounds cosmic, almost mythological. He could have called himself anything. He chose something that sounds like fate, like the stars aligned for this, which is probably exactly what he wanted you to think.
Well, another thing that's worth pointing out is that this man chose a symbol that looks like a gun sight, a crosshair. This is a target. It is both astronomical and violent. It says, I'm watching the stars and I'm aiming at you at the same time. Now, I can't confirm or deny if they had horoscopes in newspapers back then or not. But I will say copywriters, well, now AI, couldn't come up with something better if they tried. The Zodiac did in his living room with a felt tip pen and an evil conscience what nobody else could do.
And now the whole Bay Area knows his name. The police know, the newspapers know, the public knows, and the Zodiac has exactly what he wanted, an audience. And Mugshot family, what he does with that audience, the ciphers, the taunting, the threats, the mind games, that's part 2.
Because here's what's coming. The Zodiac is going to send over 20 letters to newspapers and police over the next 5 years. And one of them, just 13 characters long, is prefaced with the words, my name is not Slim Shady.
Chicka chicka Slim Shady.
13 characters contain what the Zodiac says they contain. This dude's real name has been sitting in plain sight since 1970 and nobody can read it.
There are currently over 2,500 people who have been investigated as potential Zodiac suspects. Roughly 50 to 100 new names are proposed every year. Armchair detectives, former FBI agents, true crime podcasters, Reddit threads, Swifties who got bored between album cycles. Everyone has a theory, and everyone thinks they've cracked it.
And nobody has.
Part 2 is the letters, the ciphers, the investigation, and the failures that let a serial killer walk free. We'll see you there. But before you go, follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Mugshot Mysteries Podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, leave us a rating and a review. It takes 30 seconds and it genuinely helps us grow. Now look, the Zodiac wanted an audience, and so do we.
Wow.
Ours is
Wow.
Ours is just way less unhinged. But also, as always, what did we learn today, Gabriel?
We have learned that the moon landing is completely real, right?
Yes.
Right? And we learned that today.
Yes.
Y'all on board?
Yes.
Okay, you know who you are. We have learned that we stereotype the 60s and the 70s, and it's actually a lot of that is true. But like the status update, it's a complicated thing. We have learned that we had anarchists, we had hippies, we had politicians getting into fistfights like this was a test for Fight Club. We have learned that time and time and time again, these serial killers could have just been a killer, singular. But dumb, dark luck seems to push them through blunders like they're a politician's kid. And finally, we have learned that in order to understand anything, you have to understand the cultural climate this took place in. And the one the Zodiac killings took place in was one of strife and of anger and of uncertainty and a lot of things we can understand and connect with today.
Sneaky footsteps in the night, clues that vanish out of sight. Grab your hat and magnifying glass. glass. We'll talk this case and have a blast. Mugshot mysteries, we're on the trail. Twists and turns that never fail. Laughs and chills, it's quite the show. Who did it? Tune in to know. Stolen gem, a secret note, a shady figure in a trench coat. The clock is ticking, the plot gets thick. We'll crack this puzzle quick as a click. Mugshot mysteries, we're on the trail. Twist